Hi, I'm Bracey Odoms, a senior at Langston University as an English major and criminal justice and correction minors. I started working with the blackdoctor.org as an intern over the summer, writing articles for their website and conducting interviews with students that are in the medical field or have graduated. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Well, very nice to meet you. So I'm Avery Ford. I'm a fourth year medical student over at Georgetown and had the pleasure to be introduced to BDO through some panels that I did and love the mission. So glad to be here.
Oh, that's super cool. I'm glad you mentioned that. I did not know that you did panels with them already.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can start from the very beginning, the top. So what made you decide going into the medical field and what exactly do you do?
So I've wanted to be in medicine and be a doctor for as long as I can remember. Never wanted to be anything else really. When I was a kid, I essentially had a procedure in the ED,
Mhm.
incision and drainage for something that was crippling me for a bit, and wanted to be in the physician's shoes at some point one day and never really looked back. It's been a long road and glad to be a fourth year, but always wanted to do that. And now I'm studying to go into plastic and reconstructive surgery. So after I graduate this year, that's where I'm headed.
Okay, so you're a fourth year student now.
That's right.
So, I know that for a lot of programs, there are like some clinical hours where you're doing, or not clinical hours, but you're working already and you're doing hands-on activity. So what does your day-to-day look like already?
Right now, that is very variable. So it depends on where I am, what service I'm on. Uh, Pretty much in your clinical year, you bop around to a mini rotation so you can experience them and find kind of your calling. So I got to experience OB-GYN, peds, all different types of rotations that I might not see again, and fell for surgery, specifically plastics. And now that I'm a fourth year, I get to focus on just that specialty. So nowadays I get to work in the wound care, I work in the clinic, I can go help with pre-op and go into different procedures. I can help with those, and you just supply any sort of care you can from the medical student level. Um, and you just gradually can impact patients more and more. So it just depends on the day, but it's always fun to see where you can be helpful and where you can have some expertise and actually know what to do,
Mhm.
because you actually learn this stuff in med school. So it's been a good ride.
Yeah, I do. I definitely feel like med school and just being in the medical field in general is definitely one of the biggest degrees that you can receive where you're actually gonna apply the information that you learned. And I really admire that for your field that your day to day will kind of vary. So it's like a new challenge every day, as opposed to on my end, I'll be sitting at a desk, but I don't mind this.
We set up some desks too. We got a lot of clinic, a lot of notes to do. Every single one of these encounters you have them, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So, um, where are you currently located, and where did you go to school at? How do you feel about that decision?
Yeah, so my journey has been quite some time in the making. So I started at Colorado at Boulder for undergrad. I majored in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology and Spanish and got a minor in leadership. And then after that, went to a master's program out in Las Vegas and got a master's in medical health sciences. And then after that, I actually did a post-bac program called GIMS at Georgetown in Washington, DC. And now I've just been at Georgetown in medical school this whole time. So DC is where I reside. Right now I'm on the part in your fourth year where you get to start doing away rotations and seeing what other locations may be a good fit for you and other locations that resonate well, and kind of try them on and meet all the spectacular faculty and see the different demographics of patients that they help. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I love the decision. School is life. You got to be a lifelong learner. You actually have to enjoy the process. Uh, Reading can be a hobby, and is also necessary. So it'd be really good if you like it. But yeah, I wouldn't change it at all. And I'm very happy in the decision. It's certainly always one hurdle to the next, but I think that's what keeps you engaged and reassures you that if you really want it, you have to stick to it because it's a lifelong, journey.
For sure. And it is super inspiring getting to speak to someone on the other side of things that you've been through school multiple times and you've done the thing where you've, moved states and started a new life and gotten acclimated. So, that's definitely something to be proud of, and it's not an easy process.
Yeah.
So, for where you are now in DC, are you thinking that, this is a good location for you and that works, or are you still kind of open to exploring more areas in the United States or possibly even outside of the States?
For where I'd like to practice one day?
Yes.
Oh, I'm open to everything. I've actually moved 17 times or so. I started in Texas, went over to Virginia, DC, Michigan, Ohio, Nevada, Colorado. So I'm not tied to one particular location and actually enjoy the reset of moving. But I do have a great level of comfort being here, kind of stable for once.
Hmm.
And especially emerging from COVID, the era where we couldn't really associate much in our medical school, and then we picked up some momentum afterwards. So I really do like it here, but we'll see where I end up.
That's good. I also feel like in my journey I'll be able to keep an open mind. I don't want to say I don't care where I end up, but wherever is a good fit, I would be open to.
Mhm.
So, when you were in school, whether it's undergrad or med school or your postdoc, how did you balance keeping your work life and your social life as balanced as you need them to be? I know that looks different for different people.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a priority. You can't pour from an empty cup, and you need your recharge. For me, that's looked a lot of different ways because of the phases that I've been in. In a gap year, that's nothing but a recharge. There's a different pressure to get into school, and when you're in school, academic is the focus, but even your extracurriculars that augment the academic side. But you have to know how to unplug, I feel like, to make sure that you can keep being your full self and offer something that isn't such a draining kind of energy and burn yourself out. So I've always picked up, I like to paint, I like writing, I like museums, especially being in DC. I liked photography for a bit. I tried to do a little online class. Nature is a great reset. It's free. You can go outside, interact, see some water, go for a run. Um, and I even picked up, I don't know if it's a reset because working out is such, it is work, but
Yeah.
I like the competition in those group sort of classes. So like Orange Theory and CrossFit and stuff like that. So I kind of just cycle through things that work well for me and whatever time allows. But nothing's better than just some family time and cooking, really, for me. So I know I went through a list of all the different things, but
Yeah,
that's
but
just what works for me.
yeah, the list was good though. It was definitely well balanced, and in that balance that you listed, in balancing your work life and your school life, you also have to make time for like your personal self. So it's good that you paint and go out and work out and do things along, and then also balancing that with family. So it's like a multifaceted kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, and this will be my last question. So, I did hear that you were well traveled. So, I wouldn't necessarily assume that that would be one of the harder parts of transitioning for you. But just overall in your journey, what is one transition or one period that you were like, that was a harder challenge versus something that was, you know, you enjoyed that part of your journey, one of both.
Mhm. I think for the first one of the challenges was actually I'll do it in the opposite direction. So always having like that light at the tunnel or that goal that you're reaching towards, and it getting closer and closer with the more work that you put in. I think that one goal I was reaching for was always getting to med school. And that was just like one big milestone I wanted. And then once I got there and I got it, I was like, now what? So transitioning out of that was the imposter syndrome that came with it, and the, doubt that came with it, and looking around at your peers and almost being intimidated, but then, building that confidence back up to be like, no, I do belong here. I can make an impact. And nothing's more special than like the first time you go into a patient encounter and you just have like that eye contact, or the actual like subtle comments, or the straightforward comments that say like, thank you for being here. Like, I would not have listened to another provider, or I did not understand this, or, I studied abroad in Buenos Aires, Argentina to learn Spanish. And there are times that I can speak Spanish to patients, and we just have that level of connection that I can offer to actually impact care right away. And it's rewarding for me to be able to be that person in an encounter for a patient. So I think that kind of growing that confidence from, all right, I got here. It was a long road to get here. And then once you got there, you're like, now what? And getting that confidence again to kind of be in that space and be more confident in it. And I anticipate that's going to happen again as you go into residency. So, it's all about, like I was saying, these hurdles is lifelong, like learning lessons, but also just like maturity through the process. So it's a whole continuum.
Yeah, I definitely agree that just even after school and you've become acclimated and you have the required degrees, it's still, you're always going to be entering something. So I was storytelling about my last question, but this is my actual last question.
That's all right.
But it is no secret that people of our skin color are kind of scarce in the medical field at all levels. So how do you feel your background and your culture contributes to your career? And yeah, how do you feel it contributes to your career, and how does it play a role in just how you go about like your day-to-day with your patients or with your coworkers?
Mm-hmm. How my background impacts my life is, I mean, it's not just medicine, right? It's just how you interface with the world. Like, I am raised as a Black man. I need to understand what it looks like to be like that in America. But the things that are burdens sometimes become actually advantageous because of the way that you can connect with other folks to understand their background and where they come from. So when you step into medicine, one of the things that I know I represent is obviously myself, the institution that I'm working for, the residency program that I eventually want to get into, or the med school that I'm at right now. But I represent the people that look like me, so I have to have like a certain poise and demeanor, and remember how to navigate these spaces because things are bigger than myself. But also, when you get in front of patients, because you have that background, you can have that connection. And I think it spans more than just the people that look like you. Like I said, into the language, the people that can understand where you're coming from, and you give them that extra level of comfort to not have to have, not to say the translators get in the way of anything, but just that extra layer of like, this person is speaking to me, like they hear me for me right here, real time. And you can also have that tool. But I think that's really special. So that background is something that, I carry with me. I can't take it away from myself, but I think it's an asset. And I think having folks from all backgrounds is what makes your team really, miraculous. Mm-hmm. You have someone from, European descent or whatever it is, different classes, different, regions that I've lived in, for example, too, even connecting on like where you're from, like that's what we eat over there, or that's where those people like to hang out, or that's why I can't get to this appointment on time because of so and so. You can just think of all the different layers. And I think when you have a patient in front of you, there's so much more than, just that diagnosis or just that situation. So you want to connect on as many ways as possible. So I really appreciate that. And it's an honor being here because you look around and there's not many of us. I was one of 4 Black men in my class. In my master's class, I was the only Black man. And then in undergrad, I looked around in my biology class and of like 200 or so, and it was the same story. So it's definitely a privilege to be here, and I don't take it lightly. So
For sure. And I'm really glad that you look at it as an advantage as opposed to something that you have to deal with, so to speak. Because it just provides more connection for you, like you said, especially for those that, you know, like you said, if they may have needed a translator, then you could step in, or if they want to see someone that is a person of color in general and not necessarily just Black, then you always be there for your team and in your area to connect with them. So
right, because it even leads to a layer of just inherent trust. I mean, there's data points. This isn't anecdotal anymore. This is data driven statistics